Try different wines.
What's your favorite wine? Red or white? Hold on, first.
Red.
Okay, all right.
I'm sophisticated.
A part of me was just like, y'all, we've been great. You're just now figuring it out, but we've been great. That's who we are. It's in our DNA.
So like, do my Colossus Deadpool, like impersonation, 1 or 2 moments, right? It's.
And I'm sitting there in my head going, I wonder if I can somehow sniff the traffic going from the armband. It's got to be talking to an API or something.
To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. All right, everybody, welcome back to the C3 podcast. Look, I'm gonna give you a little bit behind the scenes. I changed the way I do that intro, and I'm so glad I did because it's like, I love it. Like the energy, I get hype coming into it. So I'm gonna do that from now on. I know when you guys see this or hear it, you're like, but you always do that. But just know that in how I do record this, I did something a little different, and I love it because it gives some energy coming in. So hey, we are back with another special guest, and look, y'all already know what it is. You guys are like, Dave, you cap every single time because you give this flowery story about every guest is special, and I'm like, but it's the truth. Because every single one of my guests is special because they come to spend the time with us and hang out and talk about some things. But we welcome to the C3 podcast, Mr. Julian Mocine-Mcqueen.
Hey.
Oh,
What's going on, David? It's good to be here with you this morning.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So as he just noted, it is morning. So for all y'all, I'm not even call y'all haters. It's the C3 squad. Y'all love me. Y'all know what it is. There's no cocktail. I got some water. You know,
just swap out the coffee,
yeah,
cocktails for coffee, and we're good. You know.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's early in the morning, people. You know what I mean? I'm not an alcoholic. Not quite yet. I don't know. Job may push me to it, but not yet. So anyway, welcome back. We're going to kick this off. Look, I'm going to tell a quick little story, and I'm going to let Julian kind of introduce himself and kind of tell you guys about what all he does. But we got connected through a mutual friend of ours. And this is what I love, right? I'm so big on networking. I'm huge on networking, right? Because it's one of the things that I feel like, if anybody were asking me, like, Dave, what are the aspects of success in your life? I was like, it's networking. I just learned to talk to different people, connect with different people. And so a good friend of ours, Paul, who has yet to be on the pod, Paul, but he connected us. He was like, hey, I think you guys would get a kick out of meeting. And man, was he right? Like we met up, had a Zoom call, and just it was incredible, man. We just within 5 minutes, we was just talking like we was old friends, and I love it. I love that energy when you meet new people. I love to hear about people doing different things, exciting things, and so I was definitely like, I think it was maybe like 10 minutes in the conversation. I was like, you got to be in the pod. Like we just gotta, we gotta have the pod. And so here we are. So appreciate you coming on. And give the people a little bit of intro. Tell them about yourself, what you got going on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here talking with you. I've gotten a chance to check out a couple of these, and it's good. It's like always a rich, lively conversation, so I'm honored to be a part of it. So I'm Julian Mocine-Mcqueen. I am based out in San Francisco, California. I'm from Oakland originally, and I was raised, how I know Paul is when I was pretty young, I moved up north to Northern California, a place called Humboldt County, a little town called Ferndale. Paul and I went to Eureka High together. So I've been knowing Paul since high school, always been a solid guy, he's been a really interesting, smart dude. And so, had the opportunity to get connected and so glad to be here. So why I'm here is the work that I do. I actually got to do some work with Paul and his team probably a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago, actually, around story and narrative. And how do you talk about what you do and why? And so my background is actually in the environmental and environmental justice spaces. I work for a dude named Van Jones, who people may be familiar with through like CNN and stuff. He's kind of a talking head guy, really, really smart brother, and was working out of Oakland on a project that was looking at how do we address the needs of the environment and the economy at the same time. So how do we address the most pressing need around climate change and make sure the people that most need work are getting to do those jobs and getting those careers. So looking at green jobs, particularly green jobs in the Black community and other community of colors and low-income communities. So that was the work that I was doing. And the reason I was doing it is because of a story that I heard. So before I started working at that organization, I sat down at a fundraiser that Van was at. It was his fundraiser. and he told his story, essentially what I just shared, some of it was about the environment, but most of it was about Oakland. Most of it was about West Oakland, because that's where he was working and that's where I'm from. And it was just talking about, what the youth of that community were going through, the lack of opportunity, the underfunded schools, et cetera, et cetera. I was just talking about that. And like, what if we could do something to support those young people to really have a path to prosperity, have a path to success, have a path, off the corner. And, and it was a very compelling and powerful story. But for me, it was even more so because my cousins that I grew up with, that were some of our best friends, they would come up to the country and kick it with us. We would go to Oakland and like get to be cool city kids for a weekend.
Yeah.
Because we were country as hell by this point. But we get to go be down in Oakland and learn about the new music and all of that. I remember one of the times we went down, like we were still on the Fat Boys and they had moved on to MC Hammer. You know what I mean? Like, this is dating myself, but it was like, thank God they taught us that, man. We were way off the mark,
Yeah.
So I still love the Fat Boys, but whatever. But my cousins went through it like a lot of kids. And when I was 19, they were 18 and 16. They got caught up and they got locked up for a long time. And blessedly, they're out and doing well now. But at this time, they were still facing quite a bit of time. And so I was like, man, what can I do to be in their corner when they get out? What can I do to support them? How can I position myself talking about networking? Who can I know to help them when they get out? And so I'm hearing Van tell this story, and it hit me directly in the heart, because I'm thinking, like, if I can work with this guy, I can get plugs for my cousins and connects for them when they come out, and others like them. And so I share that to say, like, that was all in the story that Van told. The way he told the story really, it hit me to my core. I ended up working for that organization for like 9 years. You know what I mean? It's been a foundational part of who I am and what I've done with my career and my life. And so the story was at the heart of that. Van's ability to tell a story. And I saw it happen time and again, whenever he stepped into a room. And so I had a front row seat to that. And that was a huge part of our inspiration, was like, the way he's telling the story is getting dollars, is getting people, is getting policy, right? And it wasn't just him. Yeah. It was a whole team and it was a whole movement. But it really, those stories were what were so compelling to people. And, and the other thing I'll say is the flip side of that. In that work, we would get to go to conferences and all over the country and all over the world. We meet people like if I met you at a bar, I know we're having a great conversation. I know I'm going to leave being like, this brother he's smart, he's funny, he's on it. Like, whatever he's doing, I'm with. But that's in those that's in the in-between spaces and in the casual spaces. And I know you're a good storyteller, so this wouldn't apply to you, but a lot of times we meet somebody and be like, man, they're cold, they're awesome. And then we'd see them on the panel and it would be like, well, all of that will be gone. It's just the program notes, it's just the slide, it's a 40 slide deck, like all of that's missing. So we both saw, and I'm saying I'm talking about my partner, Heather, who I started this with. We saw incredible storytellers in the work, and we saw incredible people doing incredible work that couldn't tell the story. And so that's why we started the Million Person Project, which is what we do. We help people. How do you talk about your work? What is your story within the work that you do? Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. And it's amazing because it is such you're so on point with the storytelling aspect, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of fell into it like unknowingly, right? Like it's for me, it's a natural thing, right? I remember, I think the first time I had to do any kind of speech or something like that or whatever, God, I was like 8 or 9 years old. Now I got to call my mom after this and see if she remembers. But I was super young, right? And I had to give a speech for something or whatever. So I stood up and I had this all purple suit. Right? Like straight Barney plum looking, like everything was purple. All purple suit. And I sit there and I gave like whatever it was the speech, and I couldn't, I was really young, so I couldn't even tell you what it was about. I just remember the purple suit because everybody gave me crap for it. But I also remember like everybody was just like, wow, like, man, like I can't believe he did such a good job, this, that, or whatever. And it was then that was kind of like my first inkling of like, okay, I guess I'm pretty good at this, right? And so from then it was just, I just kept building on that, right? Moved around a lot as a kid. So I developed part of my personality just to be able to make friends, to talk to people, to see, to get in on something. Because otherwise I was like, I never have any friends. I was like, I was moving like every year and a half. So I'm just like, oh, I was talking to people, I don't have no friends. And it just became part of it. But I enjoyed it because I love like meeting new people. And so anyway, fast forward, when I started doing a lot of speaking, I would tell people, they were like, man, what's your process? What do you go about? And I was like, look, I was like, look, I work in cybersecurity, identity access management. This shit is boring. Like, nobody cares. Like, I love this shit and I don't care. Like, I bored myself putting together the slides. So I'm just like, what point is it to put together a slide deck and then just like read what I'm telling y'all with that? No, like the power is in the story. It's in the pauses between the pictures, right? And another analogy I use to people is like, look, when people tell me, it's like, oh, I get nervous, stuff like that. I was like, all right, if you go on an amazing trip, say you go to Hawaii, it's the first time you've ever been to Hawaii, right? You're there for like 2 weeks. You're hiking, you're swimming, you're canoeing, you're doing all these things, right? The whole time you're taking pictures. And so when you come back, you're telling everybody because you had just such an amazing time. But if you just took your phone and like showed them the pictures, they just be like, okay, cool. No, what do? You show them the pictures. He goes, oh, wait, let me show you this. Right?
This was right before this happened. And
we did this, like every picture has what? It's a story, right? And so when you're doing that, you're not worried about, am I saying the right thing? You're not like, you're using the picture. It's a prompt. You start telling the story of like what happened with that picture. I was like, it's the same thing with a presentation, right? Your job is to create the visual, so they're there with you, and now you fill in the visual with the details, right? And it is very powerful storytelling because that's what that's the basis of how communication as a species, that's how it started, right? Absolutely. When we couldn't write anything down, when we didn't have this, right? We couldn't send an email. What do? We sat around a campfire and we told stories. I said, hey, Julian, man, let me tell you about this. I was coming over the hill yesterday and I was hunting this tiger, and then
that's right.
Man, like I was able to wrestle it down to get there. And like we tell stories, and then we meet, right? And maybe we're not in the same tribe thing or whatever. You go your way, I go why. But what? Now you have this story. So then when you go to another fire camp, you sit down and like, look, man, I don't hunt tigers, but I met this guy and he was telling me, and that's how we share knowledge. That's
well, it's so funny, man. We wrote a book about storytelling and about the technique we use and stuff. And that's one of the exact stories we use in that, is like that reality that it's not, there's a lot of science behind it. We are incapable of not responding to story. Like, it is who we are at our core. Humans are hardwired. Our brains are hardwired to respond to stories. So when you share information contextualized in a story, it lights up so many more parts of your brain than just like the core information, right? So if you wrap something in a story, everything's firing. People are right there with you. And in fact, if you're telling a good story, people have on some level the experience that they're there with you in that story, right? So they're feeling the same, so when you hear a good story or watch a great movie that brings emotion up and you start tearing up, that's that hardwiring at work, because your body's like, wow, I'm right there with them, because of that story. And when you take somebody to that type of place, you can take them anywhere else. You know what I mean? They're there with you. And that's the core of what we share with people. It's like, what you do is important. Your work is important. You want people to understand it. But if you really want people to understand it, you need to take them through a story around it. You can't just tell them the facts and figures. You can't even just tell them, the one thing that happened this one time, but wrap it all in a story, and then wrap it in your story. And that's the other thing that people, are sometimes resistant to, is like, oh, it's not about me, it's about the work. And it's like, hey, look, you're the one standing on stage, so something's got to be about you.
Right.
I mean, you're the one in this interview that they're trying to hire, so something must be about you. You're the one hiring folks, so something must be about you. So like, let's not, there's no shame in it being about you. It's about the quality of your participation. It's about the quality of your offering. It's about the quality of the story you're sharing and how you're fully committing yourself to whatever it is you're doing. So that's a lot of what we try to encourage people to understand. It's like, look, it is about you, and thank God it is. Somebody got to make it about them. Like, we need people to be doing this work, whatever that might be, right? But you can share a story in a way that opens up opportunity for people to connect. That is actually a generous space that says, hey, here's my story. And through hearing that, I feel like if I'm listening to it, I'm now more capable and more ready to share some of my story, right? So you're actually opening up more space for people to kind of step into.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. One of my early mentors used to say this quote all the time, right? And it's over the course of my life, it's kind of meant different things as I've matured. Mm-hmm. But he used to say, like, like, if you light yourself on fire, people will come to watch you burn, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of different ways you can take that when you hear it. Yeah. And to me, the point of it was like, you always have to do something to draw people in, right? Mm-hmm. It could be a bad thing, like some people just want to watch, but the world burn or watch you burn or whatever. But the other thing is like, people, like, you will do something that draws people in. They will come to you because of that thing, right? You light yourself on fire, like people are gonna come and watch, right? And he never really meant it in the literal terms, but as I got older and started using that, it's really like, it goes down to leadership principles and that story of like, people follow because they're inspired. They see something in you that draws them to you, right? And to me, it was always about a story. Like, why do you want to follow somebody? You look at any of the successful leaders throughout history, right? They were all storytellers, right? In some sort of fashion, they were able to tell a story, to your point where you're talking about, that connects to that emotion, right? Because that's what drives human beings, period. As logical and as smart as people are, right? I could find the nerdiest of nerds, give me facts, everything else. No. I guarantee you, like, if I find a way to connect to their emotional side, that's going to drive them so much faster, right? Most of the time, we use facts to hinder emotion because we don't want to make emotional decisions. So we use facts as a way to kind of sort that out, because emotions aren't they're these things that you can't fit it into a space, right? You can't explain how you feel. There's no, it's a feeling, right? It draws you. And so, a lot of people use facts to kind of, because it makes them uncomfortable. I want to do this. I want to make this decision. But at the end of the day, we're emotional creatures, and that's what we're driven by.
Right. Yeah. So, well, and that's one of the things, it's been interesting because we've been doing this for, it'll be 11 years this year that we've had the organization, officially. And of course, been working in stories for longer than that. But over that time, the reality and the recognition of the power of stories has just exploded. And so that, which is an incredible thing. But it can also be, sometimes it's frustrating because people use it as a, it's like a trick, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't matter the story, just throw a story in there. But what I love, what you're talking about is that emotional resonance, right? We're talking about when you actually are bringing it in something that's real to you, and it translates to your audience in a real way. And I say audience loosely, that could be one person, But when you're able to bring your true self to the fore and allow people to see that and experience that, it opens up that opportunity, and it's that emotional experience that, as you said, draws people to the flame. So I think when I hear that quote, I think like, okay, so that's one way, right? And that there's a self-destructive element to that quote. But when you are telling your own story and when you've done the work to really understand it, you're taking control of the narrative. So you're not lighting yourself on fire. You're lighting a fire, but you're not lighting yourself on fire, because you're choosing, what is the narrative? What is it about me that I need people to understand, so that they can mess with what I'm trying to do here? What is the story that will help them get it? And that's the work that we do. And the other thing I like about that is what you said about we're emotional beings. Our work world has been designed over many generations to like block all that out and to like compartmentalize. But the funny thing is, it's like, it's impossible to do. So we can pretend, but those emotions are still there. Yeah. Those feelings are still there. And if we're not actually actively saying, hey, this is how I felt in that moment, this is what came up for me, this is why I do this stuff, because this part of my life was really hard, so I'm working to change this thing, right? If we don't actually bring it's still in there, it's still going to come out in weird ways. It's going to come out in salty ways. It's going to come out in ways that don't, that impact people and ourselves poorly, as opposed to, again, taking control of the story, saying, hey, I'm not afraid to share some of my stuff. I'm going to bring it because I'm bringing it every day anyway. So I want y'all to know, when I react to you in this certain way, that's because I was raised in this way. That taught me this. So I expect this of y'all. So now I'm not just crazy for expecting this, that, and the other. This is where it comes from, right? And that gives people more information to work with and more empathy ultimately to say, oh, okay. So they're a particular stickler about the font but it's deeper than the font. This is why now I know, okay?
Right.
And they have a story to help them even remember, because a lot of times people ain't doing something just because it's like, oh, and like they didn't realize what your priority was. They didn't think about it in that way. So now they are, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, it's you're absolutely right, especially on the business side, as we've seen this shift, right? Emotional intelligence has become a thing over the last 10 years, right? People are realizing that, holy shit, like, hey, people are actually human beings, right? And they're not robots. We can't go clock in, I can leave everything. Like, no, all of that comes with you, right? Every day you go to work, it comes with you, whatever's going on, right? And I think even these last 2 years, we've seen that even more so the case, because people had to work from home. It's like, yeah, just because I'm going to work and I hop on the Zoom, that doesn't mean my kids stop running around, right? That doesn't mean, you know, I'm still not trying to figure out how to put my newborn to sleep and do this and juggle all these things, like, and deal with my kids having to be locked in the house as well. Like, all of this stuff like made us very, very aware that, holy crap, there's no such thing as like David Lee becomes a different human being when he comes to work. No, everything comes with you, right? And so being, as we're starting to see more, I would give them more progressive and modern companies understand that. And we're now starting to build companies that say, look, let's benefit the entire whole of a person, right? And make it clear that it's like you bring who you are, and then we kind of, you know, we work through those things, right? And that way you can be your whole self and do that thing. And I think because of this rigid past of what we expected of what business culture is, right? I think it's caused it's led to the further systemic, racism and sexism within there. It's like, you are supposed to act in this certain manner. Like, says who, right? Like, who said that? Like, do you act like that at home, right? Do you wear, like, what I hated is like business casual and business suits. I was like, do you wear a suit everywhere you go? I was like, no. Like, why is it all of a sudden I have to have a suit on to be able to articulate what something is going on? I can articulate that whether or not I got a suit on or whether or not I got a t-shirt and jeans. I get it. I'm not going to go off on a tangent on that one. But my point being, like, this we're going through this period of like understanding like the whole person, which even digging deeper to, everybody's like the Great Resignation. No, I think it's just people are realizing it's like, I want to find a company that accepts all of me, that allows me to be me and excel in the ways that I can and that are fulfilling, right? So that way I'm true to my story, right? Like, which the one that I share, but I also believe that there's an internal story, right? That we have that's driving us. And when you're not able to share that, right, it just causes this dissonance.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And the way we talk about that story in the work that we do is the values that guide you. You know, what are your deeply held values? And part of what we help people do is uncover that, both the values and the story behind it. And so people and your values, I don't have values at home and values my friends value at work. I have values that guide all of that stuff, right? You know, and some of the values that I hold may apply more to one area of my life than another, but it's all always present. And that's what people are looking for. And you're right about that. And that's one of the things for our work, you know, like a lot of times it's like, oh, I want a TED Talk, you know, or I got a TED Talk and I don't know what the hell I'm going to say, you know, what do we do? And, you know, or like, this, you know, I'm doing this speech at this time and, you know, or I'm taking over leadership of this company and I want to just be as powerful of leader as I can. So people are coming up to that purpose, you know, and it's outward focused. But as often as not, I would say as much as we support people with that, and that's the outcome, we get you there, let's go. You know, the work of, you know, the way that we get to see and experience people come into see their values come into focus in a clear way and in a way that they can talk about it. Man, that's a really powerful experience for people. And that is part of that, you know, that great resignation that like, hey, people are coming into their own understanding of the values that are most important to them. And they're applying that lens to everything in their life. And if it doesn't line up, people are saying, nah, not anymore. Because before it was like, hey, it doesn't matter if it lines up, a job is a job. And I can appreciate, you know, things have changed. And I think especially as, you know, as Black folks, as African-Americans, like, you know, that was real. Like you take the job you get, right? And that was too often and for too long the scenario that people were in. But the world is changing for you know, across the board.
Right.
And we have, you know, we are blessedly, many of us in any community, you know, you have some more options. You have, you can, you know, you're not in that place of just survival, right? And that's just across the human experience, I think, you know. And so people are saying, part of my survival is being happy and healthy. Part of my survival is not being in a place where I feel like they don't value, they're going to treat me like a robot and grind me into the dirt. Like that's part of what is part of my, important to my survival. It ain't just, I need the paycheck, right? And story is what helps people to articulate that and find those places. And so it's interesting because it's important for individuals, but, organizations and institutions and companies are made up of individuals. And so those companies that are best able to express their values and share their story, they're the ones getting the best employees.
Right.
So it really goes both ways.
And you bring that up, and it's a perfect segue because I wanted to ask a question like, with what you guys do, how much do you like work with like sales organization of companies, right? And helping, their sales leaders or even their sales team, like develop their story and get better at storytelling. Do you guys do any of that?
Yeah, we do some of that. We definitely work with, we've worked with, every part of every team. And one of the interesting things is, that is obviously story in sales. It's like, that's marketing is story. It's like, period. Like that's a full stop, right? Like that's what that is. So it makes a lot of sense there. But one of the things that we do in our marketing is like everybody on your team is part of your sales team for what you do, right? So I'll use Remediant for an example. That's Paul's company. Their team is largely, it's like, it's mostly programmers and they it's very, very technical, right? It's like cutting edge around security. This and that. I can't tell you what the hell they do, but everybody on a team is responsible and has an opportunity. I would say more than responsible, has a huge opportunity. You don't know who's going to meet who. You know what I mean? You don't know who is going to be the person that meets the person that's going to be the key, the linchpin for your Series B fundraising, right? That could be anybody on the team at any time. And so we like to work across team to help everybody understand who, first to help everybody find their own authentic way of talking about what they do, what the organization does, why they do it, why it matters. So that's everybody gets that. But then in that process, we work with people in teams and across teams so that they can see and hear how others are talking about it. And then through that, you can actually see what are some of the core values that really cut across team, that are like just organically, you're starting to recognize like, oh, all of us have some, desire around this, or like, this is something that we see over and over again. And so working across team allows, I think, for kind of a more fuller story for everybody. And then the marketing team is getting to draw from that and see and hear, they're getting game, right? Like, ooh, I hadn't even thought about it like that. Okay. So, there's an opportunity there. The other place that more recently, and this is kind of like, along with the Great Resignation, is this, this awakening around race over the last couple of years. Awakening for some people, I should say. Some people are already woke. But bless that, and it's a beautiful thing. And companies have really like this is like, okay, it's time to get serious. Let's go. So we've worked with a number of companies around their diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and that the story there, right? You have people that are charged with. I was working with a big company that's in aerospace, making airplane engines, and and they have this task force that's committed to that, and the people on the task force are like really, really dedicated. But the truth of it is they're nervous, if not scared, about how do they talk about this. Right. When they get pushback, what do they say? Why do they matter? Why does it matter? Da, da, da. How is it related to the bottom line? All of those kind of things. So it's been really, for me, it's been really gratifying to help people in that of like, how do you share this story of this thing that can be, shouldn't be, but is, controversial, and you're not everybody's on board. How do you talk about it in a way that can at least get in people understanding, if not agreeing? You know what I mean? Of why this is something that's important. So that's been another interesting avenue that we've gotten to work with folks on.
Man, that's number one, really good to hear, right? I've had conversations on the pod before with a couple of guests that I had, specifically, Janae Johnson, her and I, like, just through the pandemic linked up, and we both kind of took up that. She beyond has the flag and has been running with it well before I met her, but I just kind of joined in on her race in March, and we've had some conversation about that. And my thing is, even for me, as I've become like more vocal about it and paying attention to how companies are handling, even companies that I work for, like, making sure that, looking at how we're doing those initiatives and going about it, I'm happy to hear that companies are realizing that you have to really dress this in an authentic way, right? We can't just kind of just go, oh, well, we're kind of, we're diverse workforce. Yeah. Like just
right. Throw it up on the website. It's one of our core values and we're done.
That's it, right? It's core value. Look, we hired a woman. Like, it's just like it's the typical stuff that they've done, right? So it's good to hear that companies are digging into it and really approaching it, right? I think I've always said this, right? And it's with any business, right? People have to understand that, like, yes, it is a business, so everything has to come back down, like, to the bottom line, right? A business is created to do a certain thing, whether it's delivering a service, delivering a product, blah blah blah, whatever it is, right? And I learned this coming back from like consulting, doing identity access management, right? I was like, the quicker that I can get what I'm trying to get done and connected to your business values and drivers, and I can show you that this will indeed help you get your goals, which you want as a business.
Yep.
The quicker I can get people to get on that boat, that train, like literally, like I would go into projects and be like, the senior president would be like, I don't want to do this. It's a waste of time, blah, 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 whatever. It's okay. Find out what's important to that person. Okay.
Yeah.
What's important to you that, you have the easiest, most cost-efficient thing in identity access management is password reset, right? Okay, cool. If I could tell you that I could automate password reset and that you would have, 10,000 less password requests, which would save you X amount of, like, then it's like, oh, I'm all on it, right? And I was always saying it's the same thing for, unfortunately, the sad part is the same thing for diversity and inclusion, because what I've noticed is that, like, just because we should be good people doesn't seem to work with a lot of business people, right? It's like, we should just do it because it's the right freaking thing to do, right? Like, how about we just be good people? Oh, no, it doesn't work for you? Okay, great. Let me show you why having a diverse management team that both has women and different genders affects how you deliver products, which gets you into different markets, which then raises your total addressable market by this amount. Now it's like, yeah. And you do that by actually having authentic ways for people to feel comfortable here. They can be their own.
That's right.
And people can see it. Because the thing that's happening, man, is like people now, like, you get recruited by a company. What's the first thing? They're going to look up the company, go to About Us, and they're going to look at it and be like, I don't see anybody that, nope.
Right. That's
right.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? They're going to look at whatever you're putting out there. They're going to look at the team functions and go, nobody looks like me. Nobody looks like me. I'm out. Right. And so it's this thing so it's good to hear that companies are going through this. I'm a hammer when it comes to this stuff, right? I'm just like, I did a talk, was it 2 years ago now? Like, looking at the numbers of some of these big tech companies, like, the numbers are atrocious. It's ridiculous. Right. And that shows me is like, you're not actually putting anything into it, right? Like, you're just saying words, and you really have to take a deep approach and, like, mean it. And it's going to take time, and it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have uncomfortable. You have to reconcile with your own bias, which everybody has.
Yeah.
For some reason, we think we're all perfect, right? It's like, I don't have bias. I don't see color. Bullshit. Right. We all do.
Like, again, bias is hardwired into humans. That's part of who we are. So it's no shame. And then that's one of the things I think about when you think about story in this. It's like, how do you get how do you tell a story that allows people not to be in shame? Because the reason they don't want to do anything, because they feel shame. If they have to face it, then that means, oh, I'm a racist, I'm a bad person, da da da. It's like, it's not even about that. Like, I mean, for some people it is, but for most people it's not, right? It's not. And it's about what you can't see, and the decisions you're making that you don't even know you're making. And that's and if you are acknowledging that and taking actions to not make those unconscious decisions, then you're doing your work, and that's all you can ask of people. But so how do you tell a story that helps people to see, that it says, like, hey, we're in this together. This is why it matters, right? Beyond, and yes, it's the right thing to do. But like you said, it makes bottom line sense across the board. There's many, studies and things to say that. And so, okay, then how do you take action around it? And how are you in control? People feel like they're not in control. Help people to understand, tell the story that helps people to see, like, you have some control here, and you're not a bad guy, and you have the opportunity to be a good guy.
All right.
So it's complex. That one in particular is very complex. And I think we're just really, my hope and my concern is that as everything these days, it's like flash in the pan, like it's the big thing. And then it's not. We've seen this before around these issues. This is not the first time. It feels different in some ways, but in some ways it doesn't. So, I think what's really important is how do you get that, to talk about what you're talking about and sort of share that bottom line understanding across the board where people, where it really does become like, this is how we do things now, and that's where we need to get.
It's definitely a marathon with that one, right? I look at it in, I've told myself like in my lifetime, right? I want to see the change. I believe it will. And part of it is because, with each working generation that comes up, right, their experience with this is so different, right? And what encourages me is that when you look at the generations coming behind us, I look at my nephews who are now in their early 20s, right, and how they grew up versus how I grew up, right? And just in that small of a generational gap, right? They grew up going to like middle school and high school, and their friends were all over the place. Right. I mean, they had all kinds of friends, and I would watch them interact with each other, right? And it was very like they were aware of their cultural differences, but they celebrated it with each other, right? Like I remember watching a couple of them kind of get there talking about where they were going to go. And they're like, hey, we want to go to this one place to go get tacos. It was like, no, we're going to get tacos. We're going to go to Lisa's house because her mom makes banging taco. Like, it was just like, talking about it. And she was talking about like her abuela makes it and stuff like, the ones your abuela makes. And so it's just, you just saw
that's beautiful. I love it.
Mix of like, and to them, it's a conversation. They don't even realize they were crossing like, it didn't matter. It was just, we just want to talk, right? And it's like, so you start to look at these generations behind them and their experience and what's going on. Like, it gives me hope because as they start to take in these positions, right, and they start to tell their stories, like these stories really start to truly represent what I think the vision for this country has always been, where it's just this beautiful melting pot of all these different things, right? And we're having like, listen, I'll say this and try not to go on a tangent, but like even when you looked at like the biracial kids that are coming up, we're having all these mixture of cultures. So now you're having generations growing up where it's like I got an abuela and I got a grandma, right, and a big mama, right? They have both, right? And they have all the cultural things that comes with that, right? Like I go to Big Mama's house, and if I'm not careful, I get beat with a switch. I go to abuela's house, and I'm getting, breakfast tacos, and like, and they bring all of that, right? And it's a beautiful thing. So that's what gives me hope. There's a lot of work to do. It takes the people that are here that are in the positions to keep fighting and make sure that when they do come up, right, that a lot of this BS that they run into just isn't there anymore.
Well, it's absolutely true, and it's making me think about the coming back around the stories. Like, how do you, with that being the case, and people, it being more and more a part of the reality, these younger generations coming up, and they're like, y'all are tripping. Like, what is even you talking about? Like, like, so how can they be, where that, as people come into their own leadership, how do you help them stand firmly in that story, understand how to share it, and understand how to share it in a way that allows people to see themselves in it and to see themselves as actors in it, as people who can take action. So one of the things about stories is like, it's great to like share a story of like what is, but then how do you help people see what can be and what can they do in that story? That's one of the parts of our technique. It's like, it's your story, it's your values, it's what's guiding you, but you're connecting that to whoever you're talking to say, and I know you want to get down too. I know you want to be a part of the solutions, and here's what we can do together. So I'm thinking about young folks and how can they stand in those stories, or anybody who's committed to this and whatever it is in their work. How do you share a story that helps people who are listening not just be like, oh, that person's so cool, they got good ideas, but say, oh, that person understands me. Oh, and they think I can be a part of this too? Oh, shoot. Okay, well, maybe I can, right? Where you help people see their own agency and their own power in a given issue, whatever it might be. Whether that's from, looking at the outcomes of the business itself and the bottom line question, or like, let's go team, or whether it's something that's more foundational about like, what are the values that uphold this team and how can we ensure that everybody can feel at home and thrive in this place and feels like it's the place they can be. So how do you help people see their power in that vision, right? And that like, this is what we're trying to create and here's where you fit in, right? And that's the story. Like, so as you're telling that, I'm getting inspired by you and I'm like, man, that's why this work is so important to me, because I want to help people who are trying to do good in whatever form it takes, be able to share those stories that help others to see like, oh, I can be a part of it. Okay, now you got a bigger team. Let's go, right? And that's what we need. And whatever the issue is, you need a bigger team.
Yeah. Teamwork made the dream work. So I'm going to let you right now. All right, everybody, we're going to take a real quick break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to do a couple things when we get back. We'll do some quick hitters for Julian. And then, of course, we get into the famous, infamous worldwide segment, The Last Sip. So we'll be back right after this.
Hey, what's up, C3 Squad? Don't forget to check out ebonyascent.com. That is where the C3 Squad is now officially hosted in the C3 podcast. But we also got some other great stuff. We've got our Money-ish blog where you can check out some articles that deal with financial literacy. We're going to have some great content coming there, as well as open door conversations. Hey, look, I'm telling you, this podcast right here is a great podcast that deals a lot of things with mental health. We've got 2 mental health professionals on this podcast going through some of the things that, sometimes we really don't like to talk about, that they're there to walk you through it. You can send in some questions. So please go ahead and check that out. And more great content coming. We've got so much stuff lined up for you guys. It's going to be coming out to ebonyascent.com. So go to ebonyascent.com, subscribe, sign up as a member, and get access to all the great content. All right, let's get back to the pod.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the C3 pod. So I want to do a little. I want to do like this quick hitters, right? As everybody knows, I build this show from episode to episode. At some point, I'll actually get like organized and kind of have it done with different segments. But until then, I just like having fun. But I do like doing this segment. So first thing that comes to mind when you think about it, we'll do that. Then I do want to get you to ask you a question about just kind of the future, where you see the Million Person Project going. But so quick hitters. Right now, if you had to, if there's somebody watching this and they're listening to this, they're like, man, that's super dope. What is like 3 things they could do right now to become a better storyteller?
Oh man, that's a great idea. Well, one of the things that I would recommend people doing is what we call, you can do some story mapping. So one of the things that we really start with is like, think back through people that have really inspired you. What did they teach you? What was the moment that you learned something from them? So this goes to the values piece, right? Mm-hmm. So when what I would encourage people to do, particularly if they're talking about, trying to share their story of what they're up to and why, think about it in terms of values. So go through your life story. Think about mentors in your life. Think about lessons you learned, times things didn't turn out how you liked, and what did you learn from that? Think about they're really, honestly, they're just turning points. We all have them, and they come in ways that are positive and ways that are negative. So I would encourage people to sit down, take 30 minutes even, and just think about some of the core lessons that you learned. And if it comes up, write it down. Don't try to overanalyze it or think about it. And that can be really useful in helping you understand, some of the values that are at the root of what you do. I would encourage people to think about, in terms of just storytelling, if you're like, oh man, I got this presentation and I want it to rock, think about how you take off and how you land. All right. This I learned from Van. Storytelling is a lot like a plane flight. It's the takeoff and the landing that matter. It can get real rocky in the middle, but if you land the plane, that was a successful flight, right? So
yeah.
Public speaking is very similar in that way. Right. So think about how you bring people into the space, opening up with some humor, dropping straight into a story, not giving a bunch of preamble, but just like, boom, get into it, right? Suck people in from the beginning. And then more importantly, how do you land it? And when I think about a landing, I want you to think about vision for what's possible, right? Where are you taking people? And then what's their role in it, right? And then maybe another piece is like, why does it matter to take action? So people are busy, right? So you want to create some sense of urgency.
A call to action.
Help them see a little bit of urgency of like, this matters now. And then this is what you can do. And most importantly, here's the world we can create together. Here's the opportunities we can create in this business together. Here's what our next quarter can look like together, blah, 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 whatever it might be. but think about that vision. You want people to see themselves in what you're doing. So that's another big part of it, is that takeoff, landing, and then think of your work in terms of values.
Look, man, C3 Squad, y'all just got $1 million worth of game. Look, yeah, look, that alone, man.
Yeah, that is true. That's real. Like just that. Just take that. Just spend time on your takeoff and your landing. Know where you're going to take people. The last thing I'll say about that is it's helpful if you do lose your way. Then you can get yourself out of a jam. I had when I was young. I had all my stuff on notes. I didn't even use notes too much at that time, but I was filling in, and it was the biggest stage yet, and I dropped the note cards straight up and down. And it was like they went everywhere, and it was like, hold on a minute. And but I knew where I was going, So I took a breath, and like I didn't say a lot of things I was planning to say, but I took them where I wanted to take them. Right.
Awesome. What's the best story or presentation you've ever seen?
Oh man. Well, that's a great question. I mean, the truth of the matter is it probably was Van. I mean, honestly, I would have to say that one that I shared. I'm sitting on the floor of this fundraiser, and this dude is telling this story about West Oakland, about Marin County, about solar panels, and about, kids on the street, about this, and it was just so multifaceted. But he told it from the heart so fully. And, honestly, I literally said to my girl that day, I'm like, I'm going to work for that guy. Like, if that's not a powerful story, I don't know what is. I didn't know this dude. I was like, I'm going to work for him. And within a year, I was working for him. So to me, that has to be it, Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, it's from my dad, and it's pick your people. It's pick your people. Don't, you need to, have agency in who you roll with. Understand who you're rolling with. How do they move in the world? How do people, how are they moving in the world as it relates to you? So, I was like, I'm a middle kid. I'm a mixed kid. I'm like all over the place. I'm always like, my gift and my curse is I'm in all the worlds. You know what I mean? And I could, so, I was just somebody like, man, I want to be popular. I don't give a shit. Let's go. Like, I'm just like, man, have some discernment, right, about who you choose in your life and how you see them moving with you and other people. And so that's been really important and a huge blessing in the sense that I feel like I've always had a solid crew in all the different worlds I run in. And so that pick your people has been important for me.
Oh, man, that's dope. Yeah. Favorite place that you've been, and then they never say ask double questions, but I do it anyway. Favorite place that you've been and place that you still want to go.
Okay, yeah. Woo! That's really hard. Through the Million Person Project, we got to travel all over the world, so I've been to a lot of cool places. Oh, favorite places I've been. I mean, I can't say the favorite, but I will say one that jumps out is the Pacific, like Fiji, Tonga, the Solomon Islands, Kiribati. We went to all of these island nations, and first of all, like you go to Fiji and you're like, where did all these black people come from? What is going on here? They're Fijians, so just know that they're Fijians. But you're like, I'm like, it looks like Oakland. Like it was great.
All right,
well, that tripped me out. But it was a beautiful place. But those cultures, their commitment to hospitality is so deep and so much a part of their culture. I've never been, and that's true in a lot of the places we've been. I've been to Uganda. It was the same there. But that commitment to making people feel at home no matter where they're from is profound. And I learned a lot from it. So I would say those are some of my favorite. Where I still want to go, Mexico City is probably number one. I love cities, I love New York. I love big cities. So Mexico City is probably number one. But Brazil and New Zealand are high up there. Those places seem dope. So I want to go to those. But Mexico City is number one. I got to get there. Okay. I know that place is popping. The food, the art, the music, it's all there. So I'm ready.
All right, super dope. Okay, so what's next for the Million Person Project? What are some big things you guys are looking to do over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, man, we got a lot going on. I mean, I'm really excited. Truthfully, I'm so excited about an opportunity in part afforded by the pandemic stuff and needing to be online. We built out the delivery of our work through video we have some video modules, but I started to do these live master classes. So I'll take a team, and over the course of 5 weeks, we'll do 5 classes every Friday. We'll usually take a week off in between. We'll do something like that. And I'm excited for what that allows for us to do. Before we were traveling a lot. It's in person. It's over the course of 2 intensive days, which is awesome. It's cool to be in person. But the way that allows us to work across teams that are all over the world, all over the country, we can work with them. So I've been just pounding the pavement, talking to some of our existing clients and grinding, trying to get some of those new clients. And I'm excited for the outcomes that I've seen in that work of when people are doing it together and they have a little bit of time to spend with the story, man, people are bringing it. So that's really what I'm most excited about in the coming year.
And for people that are watching, and I'll put this in the description, I want to make sure I get the website right. It's millionpersonproject.org, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So
and the other thing I'll pub is our book, How Your Story Sets You Free. So we wrote this in 2019, and it's tiny. It fits in your pocket, and it's just a game. It was all killer, no filler. So it's only in exactly what we could do with this little book. So I really encourage people to check that out. It's all the stuff is in there. Exercises, stories, of course, but you can actually walk through and kind of put your thing together with that book. So
yeah, that's dope. All killer, no filler. I'm gonna have to steal that, man. All right, so as we come up to the end of the podcast, man, this has been so super dope, man. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this and link up. So, all right, we're coming to the infamous part of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
When the third season, this podcast is worldwide. Canada counts. So, what up, Canada? But I end every podcast with the same question, same time, and it's what do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh, man, that's such a beautiful question, man. That just stops me in my tracks. Yeah. Ultimately, I want my legacy to be one of generosity. I said I had this as a mantra: generosity is my lineage, generosity is my legacy. So, I am who I am. All that I have is because of the generosity of my parents, my aunties, my grandmas, my ancestors before that. What they sacrificed, what they built for us to grow from, the lessons they taught us, that generosity. And so, I want my legacy to be that, whether it's my house and opening that up to friends who need a place to crash, the front yard to hang out when it's the pandemic and nobody can go inside, or whether it's the work that I do and really trying to give as much as I can to people to help them find their own voice and their own story so that they can pass that on and do that. That's what I want my legacy to be.
Man, all right, that's powerful, man.
That's a powerful question. That's a powerful question.
Hey, man, look, it's why I ask it, man. It's why I always ask it, and I said this before, and I need to follow up on it. Right, 3 seasons of this now, and I tell people, it's like I asked that question because of that. I wanted to hit you and think, and it kind of goes back to I'm a big sports fan, so the Jimmy V speech that they always say, right, is like
yes.
You should be driven to do certain things a day, and think was one of those. And that's why I like to ask that question, because I feel like it makes you think, right? And you should really have that kind of deep introspective thought about that. So I love getting people's answers to that. And I think at one point, maybe this summer, C3 Squad, I'll do a compilation of all those of every question or every answer that people have had and kind of put that out.
That's dope. I love that idea. That'll be something.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Until I stop doing all the editing myself, maybe we'll get that down. But Julian, man, it's been super dope having you on the pod. I appreciate you coming through. Thanks so much for entertaining us and just being authentic and being you, man. I love this. This is the kind of conversation. This conversation is one of the main reasons why I had this, man. This was I learned so much. I love the energy. Best of luck at everything with the Million Person Project. Guys, it's in the description. millionpersonproject.org. Check it out. You can reach out to Julian there, and that's it.
Hey, man, this was fantastic. I appreciate everything you're doing. I love it. I'm fully in your corner, ready to roll. So let me know how I can help. And thank you for this opportunity. This was really fun. Good way to start my day.
Appreciate it. All right. So you guys know what it is. To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. Y'all stay safe,
Coffee.